My name is Patrick McGinnis, and I'm the guy who invented the term FOMO. That's short for fear of missing out. Today, FOMO is an epidemic, and it's changing us so much that it sort of feels like we're evolving into a new species. But FOMO doesn't have to take over your life. You can find the power to choose what you actually want and the courage to miss out on the rest. I'll show you how right here on FOMO Sapiens. Welcome to FOMO Sapiens, the show about finding the power to choose what you actually want in business and life and the courage to miss out on everything else. I'm your host, Patrick McGinnis, the guy who created FOMO, and I'm here to talk about a topic that is definitely in the public discussion, and that is mindfulness. I feel like I heard about mindfulness. I hear that word thrown around a lot these days, and it's supposed to help us with lots of things, curing stress, opening our minds, and most importantly, it's supposed to cure FOMO and FOBO, or fear of a better option. But what exactly is mindfulness? I mean, what does it actually mean? I actually not entirely sure I know. Is it meditation? Is it something else? How do you do it? And what does it bring to your life? Well, I have the perfect guest to talk about that topic today. It is Dina Kaplan, who is the founder of The Path, which teaches meditation for the modern mind. The Path has taught thousands of people to meditate across the world at festivals, including South by Southwest and Sundance. Dina is a certified meditation teacher and leads meditations around the world at conferences for large and small groups, brands, corporations, and for individuals. Before founding The Path, Dina was co-founder and COO of Blip TV and was also an Emmy award-winning television news producer and reporter for local NBC stations. She was named one of Fortune magazine's most powerful women entrepreneurs and Fast Company's most influential women of Web 2.0. Dina, welcome to FOMO Sapiens.
Thank you, Patrick. Very excited to chat with you about this great topic.
And what's fun about Dina is that Dina and I have a lot of friends in common, and we bump into each other here and there. I once lived in an apartment right after she lived in it. So we have this weird...
I hope it was clean. Was it clean enough?
Oh, it was super clean. You left it in perfect shape. Now, I like to start the show the same way every time, which is to ask you a question. Everybody feels a little FOMO sometimes. So what turns you into a FOMO sapien?
Ooh, you mean having it or not having it, I should ask.
I would say what gives you FOMO. So, we'll talk about how to get over it, but what is the thing that you just kind of can't control your FOMO?
Well, so I have a lot of thoughts on this topic because I am one of the off the chart people on the FOMO scale and have been for almost my entire adult life. And we could talk about why, which of course, like all things, stems from childhood stuff. Uh, but I still feel like this innocent, naive, kind of nerdy kid from Pittsburgh, which is where I originally grew up. I grew up a bunch of places around the world, but I started life in Pittsburgh. And I had this belief that I'm this nerdy kid that no one's gonna invite to do anything. So whenever anyone invites me anywhere, this is actually even down to me getting an email. I still have this childhood, 8-year-old within me that's like, oh, an email. Oh my God, someone wants to talk to me. Wow, how flattering. I must now spend 10 to 15 minutes carefully and thoughtfully responding to this email. So you can imagine how this translates when I get invited to a party, a gallery opening, a whatever it is, opening of an envelope. I have this child
Opening of
within me
envelope.
that's like so excited that somebody wants me somewhere, me, the nerdy kid from Pittsburgh, and I feel like I need to be there.
Wow, you just got deep into my psyche as well, because I was a nerdy kid from Maine, and I definitely, I was pretty uncool, and high school was fine, but I certainly wasn't like, captain of the football team or whatever, prom king. And then, as you go up and you find your tribe and you find the people that you identify with and you have success in whatever you do, and you get invited to more stuff, I think there's definitely a compensation that happens. So like you just really dug into my own, I feel like you just dug into my FOMO right there. So I
Well,
get you.
if you want to make it even worse, there's also that childhood part of me that doesn't actually want to go to the things I'm invited to because it's like that old Groucho Marx line. So I actually even have FOMO for things that I'm not invited to. And I almost wrote a book about party crashing. I could certainly never do this now as a woman that's founded and is running a meditation company, but pre-meditation, I have snuck into everything from the Video Music Awards to the Emmys to the Grammys. I've been to I snuck into President Clinton's 50th birthday dinner at the Waldorf. Maybe I shouldn't say this on camera. So, and that you can have FOMO on things that you're invited to or your friends are going to, but I have FOMO of world events. So I can definitely speak to this subject.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we're gonna have a lot to talk about today, but before we get into the big topic of mindfulness and meditation, I read a little bit about you on your site and I've heard a little bit of your story, but how does this tech COO, news reporter, um, FOMO sapien end up running a meditation company? Like, tell me about your journey.
Yeah, so it's definitely a fair question, especially now that you know that I ended up at a table at President Clinton's 50th birthday dinner, uninvited. We should add. I'm not sure he knew that, so hopefully he won't be listening.
Well, I think he might
Uh,
listen to the show, so now you know President Clinton.
okay. I mean, I saw Hillary and she was like, "Hi, how surprising to see you here." I can't believe I'm telling this story on camera. But anyway, it's a fair question. Yeah, I started off pretty different. So, for anyone that's listening that's thought about getting into mindfulness and just thought, oh, meditation is not for me, I am the quintessential girl that would have said that. And so, hopefully, I can lead you down my path and you'll have an understanding of how and why meditation might be right for you and how it can really, really transform your relationship with FOMO and everything else in your life as well. But we can focus on FOMO here today. So my own journey really begins when I was running that tech company, and I'm running all the operations. I'm running HR and PR and finance and marketing. And I used to tell everyone I'm chief of paperwork at a startup. You're just moving everything along and sending it off to the right people. But I'm running 8 departments on my own, and the company starts doing really well. We raised about $35 million in venture capital funds. We built a top 50 website. We have 300 million video views coming in a
Wow.
month. And we were kind of like an early version of a YouTube, you could say, uh, creating a platform for people distributing web shows. And my life looked awesome from the outside, right? You mentioned that honor from Fortune, which was amazing. And thanks to that, I got to spend a bunch of time with Warren Buffett, and I'm traveling and speaking at conferences around the world, even the World Economic Forum, and I'm in the newspaper or magazines literally every single day. And I was really held up as a role model for founders and especially women founders. But the journey, the reason that this is interesting is that on the inside, it was a very different story. And I was a complete mess. And I think what really happened, Patrick, is that I didn't have the confidence to be myself in that role of tech founder, especially of this kind of hot, super scaling startup. Which was really part of this emerging startup ecosystem in New York. And I wonder, do I deserve to be here? Do other people think I deserve to be here? Does everyone wonder why there's a woman in such a prominent role at a startup and what's her story? And I myself began to question this. It's kind of a imposter syndrome thing, I guess you could say. And I also knew that I was in a very male dominated industry, but also a very male dominated company, my own company. And I was watching how the guys would react if they were angry or something didn't go the way they wanted, if we didn't close a deal when we wanted to close it. And when I felt angry or sad, I would want to cry. So sometimes I would cry. And the guys were like, "What? This is like a league of their own. There's no crying in baseball or startups. What the heck are you doing?" So I watched their behavior, and they would slam their fist down if they got angry, or they'd slam a door. And that didn't feel like me at all, but also crying didn't work. So I just slowly learned to suppress all of my emotions. And if I felt sad, I would actually do this thing where I would dig my nails into my hand and distract myself with that feeling so that I wouldn't show an emotion of just sadness or anger, anything. I just suppressed everything. And over time, I really just suppressed my entire personality. I was constantly wondering, like, what would Larry or Sergey do? What would Peter Thiel do? What would Jeff Bezos do? And they were all guys. They were the best known, most successful guys in tech at the time that I knew of, but they weren't me. So when I constantly thought about how to emulate my behavior as I imagined they would react, I was just slowly over time suppressing every element of me. And that ended up leading to panic attacks. And I don't know if you or people in your community have had them, but at the height of one, you feel really faint, like you're about to pass out. And it's terrifying. I would have tingles shooting down from my head through my entire body, and I would be convinced that I was going to pass out.
Wow.
And I lived in terror of passing out in the middle of an intersection in New York. So basically, what this ended up meaning, Patrick, is that I stopped walking by myself anywhere in New York, and I stopped taking the subway for 2 years while running the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying, and I thought I'll never be able to walk again, and that's okay. I'll just solve it like a good COO. But it got worse and worse, and one day I remember standing at the corner of Broome and Lafayette. I had to cross two intersections to get to my office, about a 15-second walk, and I'm leaning against a utility pole, literally praying that the light won't turn green because I don't think I can make it to the other side. And in that moment, it was like this voice came to me, which we'll talk about the voice of intuition when we talk about FOMO. But this was the first time this had ever happened to me in a work kind of big life setting. A voice, my intuition came to me and it said, "You've got to get out of here. You need to lead the exact opposite life in the exact opposite part of the world." And I had no choice but to listen to this intuition. It was that strong. And I followed it. I did a transition with the board. I left the company. I booked a one-way flight to Bali with a little bit of a wink and a nod to the cliche, and I flew 6 days later and I left everything behind.
That's incredible. Now I'm curious. I'm thinking about this. First of all, that story is it's really quite unbelievable. And I haven't experienced a panic attack, but I've heard about people that have them, and I can imagine, yes, in anywhere you live, but especially in a place like New York, where
Yeah.
if you're not in perfect physical shape, just getting around this city is nearly impossible. Like it's such a tough place to live, and we're taught to just be tough and power through. I've got to think that I don't know if you were like you went to your doctor or whatever, but I mean, I would imagine the typical response would be like, let's just put you on a ton of drugs. Like we're gonna put
Oh.
you on like 57 different pills, and then you'll be fine, right? But it was something deeper and that you needed to deal with. So how did this experience of making this radical life change, right, which is pretty brave, get you to starting the path? Like where did this idea come from?
Yeah, so it's kind of a fun story. So I land in Bali. I was so stressed out at that time that it was actually too busy for me, which is funny.
Bali was too
Probably.
busy. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. So I ended up going to Sri Lanka from there, going on a yoga retreat, and then I started traveling all around. I started knocking countries off, just like I used to knock meetings off when I was running the tech startup. So I went from Sri Lanka to Bhutan and Myanmar and Cambodia and Thailand and all around. And then one day I land in India. And there's a cute guy from, I think, Norway or Denmark walking off the plane at the same time as me. And he said, "Hey, what's your plan for India? Do you want to go on a retreat with me?" And I just looked at him and said, "Actually, I have no plan. I'm a little afraid to be here on my own. And sure, I'll go." Now, I think he's asking me on a date. This turns out to be the worst date in history because what he was really bringing me to was a 12-day, gender segregated, silent meditation retreat. Who knew? But somehow this was meant to be. So I go to this thing thinking I'm going on a date, very different experience. And also, he hadn't mentioned there would be no toilet paper, literally, no soap, and no air conditioning. It was 110 degrees because it was summer pre monsoon in India. So
Wow.
it was very intense. But I think I was meant to be there somehow. Your schedule is to meditate 10 hours a day, every day. You're not allowed to do yoga, jogging, anything else. You eat, sleep, wash your clothes, and meditate. So, the real story of the founding of the path is that on day 8 of this retreat, I am 87 hours into meditation from being pretty much a novice before this, like truly had no idea what I was getting into. And on day 8, I had a huge revelation. It was like this memory came up from like the Dumbledore's Pensée for any of the Harry Potter fans out there, of something I'd never thought about as an adult, and that is me getting bullied really badly as a little kid in summer camp. And I was 9 or 10 years old. And at the end of that summer, making a vow to myself, saying, "You're never going to be the reject again. I never want to feel what I felt this whole summer. I'm going to hone my social skills so finely that I'll be popular for the rest of my life."
Mm.
And I did. But what this brought up was this pattern in me of watching the people around me. Same thing I did at Blip when I was running my startup, right? How did the guys react? How do people handle things? And then trying to mimic that. That started at a very early age because I started watching the popular girls. How would they act? What were their gestures? How long would they talk, or how long would they listen for? And I did that. But at the moment that this memory came to me and I remembered this vow I'd made to myself, it was like this flash of lightning, like shot up through my foot and exploded over my head. And the voice of intuition came to me again and it said, "You're going to come out of this retreat a better person. And everyone should have the chance to do this, but it doesn't need to be this hard with the no soap, the no toilet paper, the no air conditioning. When you're ready to come back to the United States, you will start a company. You'll help push meditation into the mainstream. You'll make it fun and easy and, dare we say, sexy to meditate, and you'll call it the path. And it's funny, I opened my eyes. I'm surrounded by 200 people, mostly native people from India, and I wanted to share this, but I couldn't share it because everyone was in silence. But I knew, Patrick, at that moment, I knew what my mission in life would be, and that is to save my former self.
That's amazing. And I love this. I have a couple questions because you've just given us like a lot of really interesting kind of information. The first question is um, intuition, the voice of intuition. I get that. Like I've had these kind of moments as well. And I'm curious from your perspective, does the voice of intuition always come to you out of nowhere, or can you invite the voice of intuition to come to you? I guess maybe does meditation get you there? Like how does that
Yeah.
work?
That's a great question. In fact, that's the question that we're going to end up talking about because I think knowing how to tap into that, first of all, listening to it is key. And the more you listen to it, the more it speaks to you. It's like everyone, right? Especially for
Hmm.
any guys in the community that have a woman in their life. A lot of times women just want to be heard. So even if you're not agreeing with us, but just say, like, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, I agree, or hey, we need to do things this way because of this reason. But your intuition also, I think, just wants to be heard. And the more you listen to it, the more it comes to you. So that's one big tip. But you can call it in, absolutely. And meditation, yes, great question, because meditation gets you there. In fact, that first retreat that I went on, which is called a Vipassana, which you might have heard that term
Yes.
bantied about. If you translate Vipassana, which is not an English word, of course, if you translate that word into English, the common phrase that's used for that is insight. So you might have heard of the Insight Meditation Society that two very famous meditation teachers, Sharon Salzberg and Joseph Goldstein, founded, which is really the first modern meditation institution in America that was meant to bring these ancient practices from Myanmar and Tibet and India over to the West. They use that word insight meditation society, and constantly you'll hear this talk of insight. It's even a style of meditation. So
Wow.
yes, 100% meditation can get you there. And in fact, if I ever need to make a decision, I know I did this yesterday. I'm trying to remember what it was about. I think it was, do I go to X party or do I go get, this thing done? I'll actually I'll say to someone, give me a minute. I'll sit down wherever I am, if it's on the ground or on a bench outside or whatever, and I'll just meditate and ask myself, what should I do? What's the right thing to do? And that voice will come to me 100%.
That's very interesting, and it reminds me a lot of. I've had this experience myself with acupuncture, where the first time
Mm,
you do acupuncture, it's a shocking experience, and it comes out of nowhere. The
so to speak.
sensations you have, right? It is, yeah, exactly. Good one, but but then the more you do it, the more impactful it feels. Like it's sort of like there's like a marginal increase on each session you go to, so that it becomes more, your body like is more and more responsive to it, and it's more and more helpful. And my experience, you're gonna solve all my problems in a bit, but like I've done meditation, and I have found that like, and I've thought about it, and it's like even if you spend a little time every day, and like I in the shower will just take some time to kind of try to be present, and I find that those are these moments where if you're focusing on the here and now and you're letting yourself, giving that space, like you can have these moments of intuition where something that you've been thinking about the last 2 weeks that you couldn't figure out, you all, it's like out of the blue, like it's like a shot out of the sky, you have the answer, which is like, and a lot of people have that maybe in the shower or when they first wake up, because that's the part of your day where you're actually giving yourself the breathing room to maybe allow your intuition to come speak to you. So it's interesting. That has been my personal experience. But you in your bio, I was reading your bio, and you've actually looked at it. You've studied a bunch of different types of meditation, and I'm so interested, like as an overachiever, and I think you are, and I am. It's like is it should you try a lot of different types? Is it that some work better for others? Like why would there be so many different styles, and how should the average person think about that?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. I actually realized I forgot one thing about the earlier story in case it's helpful for anyone, because I think this was relevant to your question. The minute that I had that insight, that memory that came back to me of that vow I made to myself as a little girl
Mm.
at summer camp, it was like I saw a jigsaw puzzle of my personality. And with my mind really strong from meditation, I was able to actually take out that piece that I'd added of optimizing for popularity. And I was able to add in a new piece, which was just having the confidence or starting to work on having the confidence to be myself. And that was when the big insight came and the
Mm,
light bulb and all of that. And I think it's important to put that in there and in this story about FOMO, because part of being able to get over FOMO is having that confidence to be yourself rather than just optimizing yourself to be pleasing to others, which I literally trained myself to do over years and years for my entire adult life until that retreat in India. And you, oh, sorry, Patrick. Now I lost your question. Remind me what it
no, it's
was
okay,
again.
but I will remind you, but I want to just comment to you on that because as you said something, it really struck for me, which is that basically the cure to imposter syndrome, which you mentioned earlier, that you felt in this previous job was this idea that, why me? The minute you get over the need for other people to approve what you're doing and you just feel like I'm going to do my thing, imposter syndrome is done. Because I've had that as well. I remember when I first left corporate America and I started my first company, one of my good friends said, who was like very much from the world that I was coming, the finance world, was like, what do you do about imposter syndrome? And I was like, I have no clue. It's a major problem for me. Got any ideas for me? But what I've realized is over time is the more that you find your path, I guess it is, when you find your way, the more that you are able to just do it because you kind of believe in yourself. So it's a very interesting kind of, it just reminded me of that. In terms of my question was, um, there's so many different styles of meditation.
Oh,
So
right.
like, how
Okay.
do
Good question.
you think about that?
Yeah. So I love that question. It's very thoughtful that you noticed that, were mindful of that, and asked about it. Yeah, it's funny because when I went on that first Vipassana retreat, I was learning a very old school Theravada Buddhism. And this is specifically the technique that the Buddha used to become enlightened. But towards the end of the retreat, our teacher said, by the way, don't listen to those mantra guys because they don't know what they're talking about. So I thought, of course, as the over optimizing girl, I got to go learn that mantra thing. What is he talking about? So I then went from that Vipassana to study the mantra technique, which is sometimes called TM or transcendental meditation. You can call it Vedic meditation, and there's similarities and differences, but these are all basically involved giving a teacher giving a student a mantra, which is a Sanskrit word, and having the student gently repeat that mantra silently in their mind's eye. So you're meditating on that mantra. So I went and studied that and thought, wow, this is amazing. So then I went down the mantra path for about 6 months. Loved that. But then people had talked to me about other techniques, the art of living, they have a course on happiness, and I wanted to
Mm,
learn that, and Kriya Yoga, which is a type of meditation which is energizing. So I went and studied that. And then people talked to me about Osho, and I needed to learn dynamic meditation and Kundalini. So I went and studied that. And what I ended up doing for the 2 years after that first retreat in India is traveling all around the world, studying with all different types of gurus and different ashrams and teachers, and learning all these different styles of meditation. And I actually think it's helpful because some people will love that technique that I started with, that Vipassana technique, and that's their technique and it works for them and they go very far down that path. But for some people, it's just not quite right. It doesn't resonate with them. And it might just be on this certain day or this certain month, but they might try that. It doesn't resonate with them. And then they think meditation is not for them, when
mm,
really it's just that that technique is not for them. And they might love the mantra technique, or they might love the loving kindness technique that Sharon Salzberg is famous for bringing over from India and popularizing in the United States. So I would say this: if you have a technique that works for you and that you love and that you actually do, then you're good. You can stay with that. But if not, or if you're curious about the others, absolutely go out and try other techniques. Every time I do a beginning workshop, which I do constantly with brands or for companies or festivals, or wherever I'm invited to teach, I will almost always start by teaching three very discrete, different types of meditation, and then having a conversation with everyone after about which one worked for them, which one they liked, and which one they didn't. And it's always different. Like some people love this and hate that. And I think it's just wonderful to expose people to different types of meditation so they can find the path that's right for them.
And so you do this all the time. So like for the person who's listening, and I'd love to hear, I know you have like a workshop that you have coming up, so tell us about that too. But like, let's imagine what's really cool about having you as a vessel for this is that you're still a very energetic person. It's not like it's, when we think about an enlightened somebody who's in the mindfulness space, we think about them like being like kind of like almost like drugged out, like, hey man,
Yeah.
feeling the flow today, whatever. You're still a very energetic, like outgoing person. So like I can relate to that. I mean, I can see if it works for you, like it would work for a lot of people. As you start working with people, like what should be, for somebody who really wants to embrace this and do this, like how do you get started?
Mm, that's perfect. I mean, if you really want to get started, let's say right here, right now, right after you're done listening to this podcast, I think you can start with a very simple technique, which is actually what we did for the first few days of that Vipassana in India. But you're lucky because you probably have soap and toilet paper around you, so you're in better shape than I was learning this. But you can really just focus on the sensations of the breath and what they feel like as the breath comes in and out of the nostrils. So what you'll do is sit with your back straight and the top of your head facing up to the ceiling. And you can either close your eyes or have your eyes open and kind of a soft gaze a foot or two or three ahead of you. And then just bring your attention, your mind to the sensations of the breath as it just very naturally, so it's your natural breath. As the breath comes in and comes out of the nostrils. And that's a beautiful way to start focusing the mind. And it's also a way, like you explained in the shower, you feel very present. This meditation brings you into the present moment because the breath is always right here, right now. It's always in the present moment. And this technique, which is so simple, is so profound that if you were to do it just 9 minutes a day, every day for 2 months, and you were to take a snapshot of your brain, an fMRI before, and then after doing this every day for 2 months, your brain would actually look different. And you would have more gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain that controls and regulates your emotions. And so you would start to just feel more even throughout the day. And it would also begin to put a pause between whatever stimulation happens to you during the day and then how you choose to respond to it.
How come I was just while I was listening to you, I was just doing that alongside. I don't know if you could
Perfect.
notice, but what is so interesting is like I feel like these shivers up and down my spine. Like what's going on there? Why am I feeling that way?
Mm. It
You
might be a
know?
sign that this is the right path for you.
Yeah.
That might be better. I mean, you were talking about mindfulness in the shower. So just to address that, I mean, if you were to ask the Dalai Lama, when do you meditate? He would say, I'm meditating right now, listening to
Yeah.
you. But I would say to that, he's a very experienced meditator. And so what you're doing in the shower is what I would call mindfulness. You're noticing perhaps the feeling of the water on your skin. Perhaps you're noticing how the feet, like the tiles underneath your feet, what that feels like. You're noticing how the air feels on your body, and that's mindfulness. I'm not sure I would put that into the quote unquote meditation category.
Okay.
So I do think even for you, Patrick, if you were to sit even for 1 minute a day, although 9 would be better, but if you can sit for 1 minute a day and do that, it's called anapana breathing, the focus on your nostrils and those sensations, you will notice a difference in your day.
That's really helpful. So the mindfulness is really paying attention to what's happening around you. The meditation is focusing on the breath and sort of doing the, observing but not judging the thoughts as they go by and trying to clear the mind. And it's not my
Not
first
trying to
trip
clear
to
the
the
mind. No,
rodeo here, Dina.
That's funny. No, I really want to say, especially for people who are new to meditation who are listening, meditation is not about clearing the mind because the mind is unclearable. The way that the human
Yes.
brain is wired is to have thoughts. And so that's true for me, who's been studying and teaching meditation for a long time now. It's true of the Dalai Lama. It's true of the guy walking down the street next to you. It's true of everyone. It's just how the human brain is wired. So, I have to smile when people say, I can't meditate. My mind is full of thoughts. I'm like, no, that pretty much just means that you're human. So, all meditation is doing is changing your relationship to those thoughts. It's not, quote, clearing the mind. And I would also say that meditation doesn't have to be focusing on the breath at the nostrils. I just wanted to give your community something to start with. You
Mm.
can also do meditation by introducing compassion for yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live today with ease. Having some phrases like that, or maybe sending out, closing your eyes and picturing someone you love sitting with you and sending to them, may you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be strong and free from danger. These are all different styles of meditation, but I would think about meditation overall as training the mind. So we can, train our abs, we can train our biceps, we can train all different aspects of our body. Well, the brain is in the body too. And meditation is the tool with which you're actually training your mind.
God, that makes a lot of it. It's funny because when I first started trying to do some of this, and by the way, we're all on a journey, so it's an ongoing
It's a
thing. But
path.
I exactly. I love that name. I didn't used to do anything. And then I started doing yoga and it made me feel really good. And so I would go all the time. And then they'd ask in the beginning of the class to meditate about a certain thing. And this is when I had quit my job. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, feeling a little stuck. And so I would choose this mantra, I would focus on something, and I'd focus on momentum. I need some momentum. Let me focus on momentum. And then a couple years later, when things started taking off, I would say, I need tranquility, I need calmness, I need this, I need that, So it's just funny how as you evolve in the state of your mind and where you are in your life, you can look for different things
Yes.
in it. So when you work with people, if it were easy, of course, everybody would do it. I'm sure, people quit, they don't last those 2 months, they don't give it time. Why do people give up, and how do you overcome it? How do you push past that to actually make this part of your life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy or hard. It just is.
Mm,
Because meditation is not about clearing the mind. Meditation is just the art, you could say, of training your mind. And so you didn't have a good meditation or a bad meditation. It just is. It's like when you're walking, you're not doing a great job walking or a bad job walking. I mean, sorry, assuming that you're mobile. You're
yes.
not like, oh, I had a great time putting my foot in front of the other foot, if that's a normal activity for you. It just is. So meditation and mind training simply are. But I
Mm,
think what it is, perhaps it's our culture that for whatever reason puts this preference towards working out our bodies over working out our minds. But what you're saying about yoga really puts a big smile on my face, because there are a lot of people that will go and do yoga once or even maybe 5 times a week, which means that they have to put on the yoga clothes and then walk or drive for 5 or 10 minutes to the yoga studio, arrive, check in, do the yoga class for an hour and a half, come home or shower, and so that could be a 2 hour or more expedition.
yeah.
And those same people will say to me, I have no time to meditate.
Oh man, you
And
called me out. That is my life
yeah,
story.
yeah. So, I mean, actually, it's funny. I was interviewing someone for a social media role for the Path a couple days ago, and she said we'd set up the meeting for a Wednesday, and we had talked about it the Wednesday before. So she had 7 days. And I spoke to her. We were talking about Mela, the retreat that we're hosting soon that you mentioned. And she said, oh, I didn't have time to look at the Mela site.
Wow.
She
Busy
had to
week.
say, huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting statement. I said, did you ever check Facebook in the last week? Well, yeah, of course. Like, okay, for more than 7 seconds? Yeah. All right. Well, you could have meditated. So, I mean, these are all, it's just a choice. It's a choice. How do you want to spend your time? People say I don't have enough time, but we have a lot of time each day, right? 24 hours. Let's say you sleep for 8. You should have a lot of hours in your day. So the choice is, how do you want to fill those hours? And could you find in those 24 hours 1 minute to even like close the toilet seat and sit on that? This is what dads have to do, I think, to hide from their wives. They have kids. I think dads have a really hard time on a time crunch, and many moms too. So can you like put that toilet seat down and hide away from your family and meditate for 1 minute? Probably, if you're honest with yourself, unless you have, I mean, if you have young kids, I get it. If you have a horrible commute, I get it. If you're holding multiple jobs, trying to earn enough money to support yourself and your family, then 100% full respect. But for most others, do you have 1 or 2 or 9 minutes in your day? You probably do. So it's just a question. Do you want to optimize for the health of your brain and having that pause between what happens to you during the day and how you want to choose to respond to it? Do you want to optimize for just feeling more even and more happy? Or do you want to put those extra hours or minutes of your day that you're not working towards checking your Instagram feed or Facebook or going for a run or calling a friend or running out to get a Pinkberry? They're just choices that we have during the day.
Yeah, that is a very, very important point. And I think, like anything else in life, I always tell people when I talk about entrepreneurship, people say, well, I don't have time to be a part time entrepreneur, which is the thing I talk about. And I was like, it's a choice. How much,
Yeah.
did you watch all of the Kardashians episodes last season? Well, if you did, you did. And that we can add up the amount of minutes you spend and we divide it by, and we can figure out, what you could have done with that time. So that's a very fair way of thinking about it. And you work with companies. Like what kind of companies? We live in a world. I think you've identified something. You were early. I mean, this movement has been coming along, but I think if you look at it now, I mean, how many places are offering meditation classes?
Right.
And there's a lot more at least in a place like New York City or some other places, there's a lot more awareness of the importance of these things, and especially in our stressed out, crazy, news-soaked world. Um, so when you see a company that is bringing you in to teach people and to create a culture around mindfulness, like what do you think that says about the company, and like what would be your pitch to any company? You know, say they're like, well, should we bring you in or not? Like, how do you kind of like convince them that this is the right thing to do?
Oh, well, we don't actually. It all comes incoming, which is
Wow.
amazing because we do get requests from all over the world, which is great. I think it's just that people are stressed. People are really stressed. And I think part of it is that our brains are not meant to be stimulated so consistently for every waking hour with our phones. I just made a vow with my chief of staff at the path because she said, I feel very unmoored. It's a very beautiful, mindful word to use,
Mm,
right? And I said,
mm.
why don't we try this for the next week? Let's try to never use our phones for entertainment. So you can use your phone for functionality if you want to order a car with Uber or Lyft or whichever platform you use, or you want to check the time or use Google Maps to check an address. That's using the phone for functionality. But what if you spend 0% of your time using the phone for entertainment? By the way, that would also, to our prior conversation, Patrick, that frees up a lot of time to meditate because if you're on the subway or you're on a train or you're waiting in line at Starbucks, rather than pulling out your phone and using it for entertainment, you could actually just send love to the people in front of you and behind you in line, which is such a fun thing to do because people feel it and they look back and they're like, oh my God,
Wow,
what's
I'm gonna
going on?
try
I
that.
did it on the subway the other day when I was in New York, and I ended up in a beautiful dynamic with the man across from me because he completely knew what I was doing, but I didn't take my phone out. And I was just saying, I send you love. I send you love. And I did it to him and to people to my left and to my right. And he completely caught on and we were smiling with each other. And what a beautiful moment. So I think that, yeah, you have that chance. Oh, shoot. Now I did it again. Sorry. What was the question?
No,
I
but
apologize.
did your colleague who stopped using her phone for entertainment feel like it made a difference for her?
Transformed. I mean, we're only 6 days into it, but I decided to take the pact with her, and it changes your life and it changes your day. So what I would say, I mean, for the companies, look, there's some hardcore arguments here, and Aetna has done those studies, which is nice because they're teaching their employees, but they're in the business of healthcare. But it reduces your healthcare costs by double-digit figures. It reduces people's absences from work. It also reduces dramatically the percentage chance that someone's going to leave your organization, and that's a huge cost, is having to hire and train new people. So there are all these numbers behind it that are
Yeah.
very hard and documented, not just in Aetna now, but there are other companies like General Mills and Google. There are plenty of companies that have brought meditation in that have incredible stats on how much money this will save you. But I think with the reason that so many companies bring us in to guide meditation and teach people how to have their own practice, because that's really the best thing, is to so that people can then do it on the subway or a train or on a flight or wherever they are, is that you become more even. So you're less, snapping at a negative email that comes in, or an email that you perceive as negative that might not actually have
Yes.
meant that. So you're more mindful throughout the day. You're more even, and really overall, you start to develop this inner happiness. I guess you might call it an inner peace, and that makes you honestly much more pleasant to be around. You work much better with your colleagues and with the people above you and below you. So I think a lot of companies that bring us in to have their teams be happier, to work better together, to have more of a sense of community. Because after you meditate, people are so open. Funny, we did a meditation for the parent company of Thrillist recently. We started in New York, and then they asked me to come to their San Francisco office and their LA office. And it was just an hour guided meditation. Then it went on for an hour and a half because we chatted for a bit after about which technique people liked better than the others. And then afterwards, everyone was so open after the meditation that they stayed for 2.5 hours. And
Wow.
people really bonded across different divisions. They made friends. It's a pretty big company in terms of the New York office, and so it was just so beautiful to see these friendships foster among people from different divisions that might have seen each other at lunch sometime but didn't even know each other's names. And that's what meditation does, and we see that really, really strongly when we run retreats. We run this retreat once a year called Mela, which is extraordinary. It's invite only and very curated, and everyone's a total baller in their field, whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur, a big Hollywood film or TV producer. But what happens is after you meditate for a few hours, you're just so open. I feel like I come back to that little girl from Pittsburgh, pre-summer camp, pre-trauma, and I'm just me. And that's when you can really connect with people. So that retreat is kind of a perfect example of what can happen even within a company when you guide meditations, is that people really bond, they feel really relaxed, and they start to fall in love with themselves. And the more you can just be yourself, the easier it is to really deeply click with whoever you're speaking with.
No, that sounds amazing, Dina. And I definitely I'm gonna make it to one of these retreats because I'm convinced that it would be a really wonderful experience.
Oh, really? Oh,
Um,
awesome.
Amazing. I
Otherwise,
probably
you're gonna have
not this year, but in the future for sure. Um, let me ask you. This is a show about finding the power to choose what you actually want in business and life, and finding the courage to miss out on the rest. You know what's your advice for somebody who, has maybe feels the way that you did back when you're on that street corner in New York City and sees where you've come today? Like, what's your advice to them to choose the right path for themselves?
Yeah, look, not everyone is going to go and take a 2.5 year trip around the world. And there were a lot of factors, including Airbnb. Thank you that let me Airbnb my place and that made that trip possible. But so if you can't do that, which is pretty much almost everyone, I would say spend as much time in nature as you can. Even, look, I have lived in New York for almost my entire adult life, but you can run to Central Park or the West Side Highway, even the South Street Seaport is beautiful. You can go somewhere and be amongst nature. Nature isn't trying to do something, trying to be something it's not, trying to be cool or be at the cool parties. It just is. Like if you're around birds or animals, they just are. And there's something that's so beautiful about being in that environment. If you for whatever reason can't get to nature, I would say even look at art if that's appealing to you, because what I love about art is there's no compromise usually, unless it's art for hire. So look at non-corporate art. Go to a gallery or a museum, and you're seeing something that's a pure expression with no compromise. And there's something that's so deeply beautiful about that. I think it makes it easier for us to go back to our core. And then the third bit of advice that I would have would be to meditate. And even if you can do just 1 minute a day, that's great. If you can do 9 minutes a day, your brain will change and you'll start reacting to things differently in your personal and professional life. And when I say differently, I mean in a better way, in a more mindful way. And meditation doesn't have to be this big scary thing. It could be doing that, just focusing on the sensations of your breath. It could be if you have issues of self worth, which I think a lot of people have, male and female alike. It could be just closing your eyes and saying to yourself phrases like, I am worthy. Or even it could be, may I be happy today. May I be strong and healthy and free from danger. And if you do that even 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes a day, it's going to change your energy for the day. And the other thing
Mm.
over time that happens, if you do any of these practices consistently, is that you start to have this inner belief that the world is supporting you rather than out to get you. And that just changes that changes everything, because when you believe the world is supporting you, it starts to support you. It's sort of like luck begets luck, and you start looking for more ways for that the world might support you, and that's when you start manifesting good fortune and just kindness and goodwill from the people around you and within yourself with everything you do.
Oh, I love that. And you know what I like about that advice too is the first two, when we talked about meditation, the first two about nature and art is both of those activities would be about valuing things that are outside of yourself and recognizing how cool it is to be alive and live in the world in which we live, where there's all these
Yeah.
crazy, amazing things, and starting to appreciate what you have and not just focus on what you don't have, which is a big part of overcoming FOMO. So I like that, because some of my happiest times, I'm from Maine, are when I go into the woods and just realize like, wow, yeah, I'm here, it's chill, but there's a whole ecosystem. There's all these bugs and animals and whatever that are doing their thing. I'm part of this system. And so like, I should appreciate that there's some pretty amazing stuff out there. I
Yeah.
always find that it gives me something really valuable.
It's
Um,
that, and it's also that they just are. They just
yeah,
is. The
yeah,
tree
exactly.
isn't trying to move to the left or trying to move to the right or worried about missing out on the party happening in the other garden nearby. It just is. And art
It's gonna
just
fall or not fall. It may or may not make a sound. Doesn't matter. Dina, this has been super interesting. Where can our listeners find out more about you, the path, Mela, all of the things that you've been working on?
Oh, thanks. That's kind of you. So I'm very accessible. I'm on social media at Dina Kaplan on Instagram or at the dot path. Not
Hmm.
dot written out, just the period path on Instagram. And our site is thepath.com. And so everything that we're doing is up on the site. We have weekly meditations in New York. We actually just sold out our meditation on Tuesday. So sorry about that. But whatever's coming up will be on there. And then Mela, which is extraordinary, is basically the exact opposite of that first retreat I went on in India. So my dream when I was there at that first retreat was, what if we could teach these techniques that are so powerful that led me to that huge insight that changed my entire life and led to the founding of the path? What if we could do that, but in a beautiful setting and surrounded by really inspiring people that you want to have in your life for the rest of your life? So that's Mela, and it's on the site, or it's just thepath.com/, Mela apply. So MELA and then apply. And I would say it's fair to say that that retreat was life changing for every single person who came. We had people who had never meditated before who went to Mela who have now meditated every single day since then.
That is amazing. It sounds, I'm not gonna say it's a FOMO inducing opportunity, but I'm having a little FOMO there. And I
Maybe you should
will,
come.
I will talk about that. If I can make it work, I mean, it sounds amazing. And maybe I just have to move something, but I definitely am going to check out the Tuesday meditation. I saw those on your site, and I live in
Oh,
New York, so if you're a New
oh,
Yorker, find me, and we'll go together. If you're listening to the show, all right. Thank you so much, Dina Kaplan from The
thank
Path
you.
and Mela. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, everybody. So I cannot wrap up the show without, of course, giving you my faux moment of the week. And faux moment of the week this week is JOMO. So JOMO's been around for a while. I believe it was invented or coined by a gentleman called Anil Dash a couple years ago. But for some reason, it's everywhere right now. It's become a meme, and everybody who sees it sends it to me. And so I have been getting all of your JOMO related information, and maybe we'll have them on the show. But I want to say one thing about JOMO that I think is kind of interesting. JOMO makes sense. This joy of missing out, the idea that it's the holiday season, you've been invited to 37 parties, but you stay home and watch that movie about the princess and the prince, or the woman marrying the prince on Netflix, and you enjoy that. I get that. Where I don't think JOMO makes a lot of sense is like big life decisions, like, well, I have JOMO that I gave up the opportunity to, join Doctors Without Borders and save 50,000 lives. Like, there's no JOMO there. It's a choice, but I don't know how you feel a ton of joy around it. So I think JOMO is certainly a great way to think about the day-to-day life and some of the things you may pass up on, but I'm not sure it's the solution for everything. And with that, I want to thank you for joining me for another episode of FOMO Sapiens. Again, I'm Patrick McGinnis. You can find more about me at patrickmcginnis.com. And of course, if you like the podcast, subscribe, give it 5 stars, tell your friends about it, and feel free to reach out to me at letsconnect@patrickmcginnis.com to tell me who you want to have on the pod. Thank you so much for joining, and take care of yourself. FOMO Sapiens.